We're talking about how to start an LLC in New Mexico, and what you can see behind me here is a checklist that we've created that we're going to go and run through on this video. I'm casting it from my computer here. But before we get to that, I want to talk about something I like to call the LLC dumpster fire. Now, this is when you set up an LLC, but you have mistakes and pitfalls that people run into, and that happens because you're not familiar with terms such as piercing the corporate veil, commingling funds, registered agent, and pass-through taxation. And it could also be that you're not familiar with things such as how the LLC renewal process works, and then also things such as getting business licenses and permits set up after LLC formation. Now, what we're going to do in this video is we are going to look into how to set up your LLC. But before we get to that, what I want to do is zoom out a little bit so we can talk about what an LLC actually does for your business, so then we can zoom in and make sure that you're fully aware of everything you need to know. So if you're not familiar with these terms up here, you will be by the end of this video, and you can feel confident in getting your LLC set up correctly. Now, why don't we go down here and open up this one, understanding exactly what your LLC does for you? Well, it does two things. It offers limited liability protection, and it also offers pass-through taxation. To better explain this, what I want to do is open this up here. It's owning a coffee shop without an LLC. So we're going to use this as a hypothetical example. Here you can see a business owner in the center, personal assets on the left-hand side, their home, car, bank account. On the right-hand side, you have the business assets, the point of sale, business bank account, the physical location, the espresso machine, the lights. Everything is tied back to this business owner, and this creates a lot of liability for a business owner. Now, a different example of this would be owning an LLC that owns the coffee shop. Well, what does that look like? Here now you have the business owner on the left-hand side with their personal assets. On the right-hand side, we're calling it Acme Coffee LLC. So all those assets are owned underneath that LLC. The important part here is the red line in the middle here. This is a division. This is something called the corporate veil. Now, you probably recall that one of the terms we're going to talk about is piercing the corporate veil, and we're going to explain that through the example of commingling funds. Now, what commingling funds is let's say you start up your business and you don't get a business bank account set up right away, and you run transactions for the business through your personal bank account. That is called commingling funds, and that is a big no-no. The reason for that is, let's say that somebody were to be hurt in your coffee shop and they sue you. Well, the attorney suing you is going to try to pierce the corporate veil. Basically what it is, they try to find cracks in your LLC. Let's say they discover that you've been commingling funds. They present that evidence to the judge, and the judge agrees with them that this was a no-no. And then what they're going to do is grant them permission to pierce the corporate veil. What that means is this division in between your business and personal assets will dissolve, and they can come after both asset classes. So they can come after your personal car, home, and bank account. That's why it's so important to set up an LLC, but to also know things such as commingling funds, piercing the corporate veil, and understanding these terms so that you do it correctly. So what's the lesson here? When you get your LLC set up that business bank account as soon as possible. Now, what I want to talk about is pass-through taxation. When you have an LLC, the IRS is not taxing Acme Coffee LLC. What happens is let's say you grossed $140,000, you had $90,000 of expenses, and you netted $50,000 of income. That $50,000 of income passes through to the business owner. Sometimes this is referred to as flow-through taxation. So the IRS is going to be taxing the business owner on your personal tax return. Now, something to consider though is the LLC is a pretty flexible entity type. That's the reason that majority of new businesses are LLCs. So what you can do here is there's a line down here that says that you can, in the future, apply an S-Corp designation to reduce your tax burden. So that's going to be something we're talking about, I believe, in the third video in this series. And this is a series, and I want you to watch all of it. Not because it benefits me, well, it does, but it's going to benefit you in terms of fully understanding everything afforded to you with your LLC. So that it's not just about getting it set up and getting it set up correctly, but also how do you save on taxes a few years out because you're doing things such as electing an S-Corp designation on your LLC. So just a little bit of a teaser for future content there. But what we're going to talk about now is actually the checklist to starting your LLC. Well, the first thing on here is to get this checklist for yourself. So it's much more than a checklist itself. You'll see a QR code on the screen right now that you can scan. There's also a link in the description below. As you go down here, there is a glossary of terms. I'd highly suggest checking out this video on LLC scams. That'll save you a couple $100 after your LLC formation, just kind of common scams that you run across. But then there's also the bonuses section. And in here, there's an AI chatbot. So this is pretty cool because it's got some pre-populated stuff. So you can do like, how do I register an EIN? We're actually going to explain what an EIN is in this video. But there's other things you can do, such as like how to start an LLC in New Mexico. And when you enter that information, what you'll see is it's going to start populating a list here specific to your state. The other thing that's cool too is if you don't know what name you want to go with for your LLC yet, you can use this to help you brainstorm. This is just like ChatGPT, except it's tailored for LLCs here. So super helpful thing right there. There's a free charitable opportunity in here. You can get $20 to charity when you get your LLC set up, a yearly accounting calendar, free CPA advice, and future tax savings. All of this we're going to be talking about in this video series as well, but just wanted to make you aware of that. Now, first things first, when you're getting your LLC set up, you kind of have to figure out which path is the right path for you. Do you want to go through the state website, online LLC services, or business attorney? It kind of depends on your situation, and that's another video topic in and of itself because we're going to deep dive on that in the next video. But the reason you want to watch the next video is I have seen people overpay by almost $1,500 when they're getting their LLC set up. So you can watch a 10-minute video and save that money and make sure that you feel confident in which direction that you're going for setting up your LLC. For the sake of this video, we're going to go through the state website and we're actually going to look at the PDF of the articles of organization and break that down for you and explain some of the things that people commonly mistake and overlook on that document. Next, what we're going to talk about is deciding on a business name for your LLC. The things that are important here is it needs to be a unique name. Now, does it need to be the perfect name? Well, no. Remember we had Acme Coffee LLC? That's a terrible name for a coffee shop. What you can have underneath your LLC is something called a DBA, doing business as, or a fictitious name. This is simply like the brand name that you have. So you could have Espresso Yourself Cafe be the DBA name, and that lives underneath the LLC. But again, what's important is having a unique name that is not already taken within the state. So what you have here is there's a little blue link, kind of harder to see, but we're gonna click on this. And as you go down, we're going to find New Mexico. Then as you open this up, we're going to look at this and then let's see, search trademarks and service, search business names. That's where we're going to go. Now on here, you can put in your entity name. Now, if I put in Lobos here, you're going to see a few names pop up here once I click I'm Not a Robot, of course. And then what you're going to see is a list of different companies with the name Lobos. But if we go back and I just kind of like jam out on the keyboard here and do that, and again, say I'm not a robot, and we do a search here, now what you're going to see is no data found. So this little ugly looking pop-up, that is what you want to see for your LLC name to let you know that it is a unique name. So then once you have that established, next what you're going to do is form your LLC, get your LLC set up. Now, there's a little half step you can do called registering your LLC. I put this in here because I don't want you to get confused. This is basically like buying the domain name, but not actually setting up the website. What you can do is you can secure the LLC name, but if you don't file the articles of organization, you do not have an LLC. So what we're going to work on right now is writing those articles of organization. Again, we have a state directory list. This bullet point list here will explain more about the articles of organization, but we're going to look specifically at the New Mexico articles of organization. So when we go here, we're looking at starting a business. So when you get into the actual portal for the New Mexico State website, right, I'm just going to do this and then I'm going to click continue. And then entity name must contain the words limited liability company. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an LLC here and then continue. What you have here is the effective date that's required. So you're probably starting this as soon as possible. Most people are going to do perpetual. Sometimes people are setting up an LLC with an end date in mind. But then once you get in here, you have the entity email address, the principal place of business, mailing address, and all this information. But what I wanted to cover with you right here is the initial registered agent office address. So create registered agent. What is the registered agent? Well, that is a third party that exists to handle important communication and documentation for your business. So in the case that you're being sued, you're going to get something called a service of process notice. They make sure that you get that information and you're showing up to court with all the proper information that you need when you're showing up to court. The things that you need to know about registered agent is you have to have one on file. They must have a physical address within the state of New Mexico, and it cannot be a P.O. box. So that's pretty much what you need to know. But the unfortunate part is they don't really give you recommendations here of like who to use, right? So when you use the online LLC services, they all partner with registered agent services. And one in particular, which we're going to talk about in the next video, actually provides that service for free for the first year. So that is the reason why a lot of times people like going with those online tools, because the state website will not walk you through this. Now, this is what I wanted to show you here. The rest of this is pretty simple. The only other thing I wanted to talk about is manager member info in the next tab here. You can see it up above right here. A member is when you are running the LLC. A manager is when you own the LLC, but somebody else is operating it. Now, if you're watching this video, chances are you're going to be setting up, you are a member-owned LLC. You're going to be the one that is operating the LLC. Once you get past that, it's really just putting in your basic information like address, phone number, those types of things. Now, the other thing I wanted to make mention of is there's a filing fee that you can see at the very top here, very small. That is $50. You pay that to the Secretary of State. There's no way around that filing fee. If you go through the state website, online tools, or even a business attorney, it's going to get baked in there. What I will say is the online tools, most of them now have a $0 plus state fee. So you're looking roughly around $50 to use the online LLC services in their basic packages. But when you go with those tools, there is a lot of upsells that they try to push you on as well. Once you get the articles of organization filed and you get the $50, you sign a registered agent. What you may want to consider next is creating an LLC operating agreement. Now, this is not required in the state of New Mexico, but what this does is it's kind of a situation where an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Let's say that you had a business partner and you guys end up having 12 different coffee shops, right? And that person wants out of the business someday. Well, how do you handle that? If it hasn't been spelled out already on an LLC operating agreement, which typically lays out who are the members and managers, what are their roles and responsibilities, what happens if somebody needs to exit the business, well, now you have to go through and get attorneys involved. And this is going to get very expensive and it's going to be very frustrating because, again, ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Now, very important to do that. You don't have to do it right away, but it's highly advised. Most of the online LLC tools, they will have a boilerplate template that you can use. If you have more complex situation, like you have business partners, or maybe you have offices in and out of state, you're already making money, that's maybe where you want to go through a business attorney to dial that in. Now, another thing after LLC formation is setting up your EIN. We talked about this earlier. There's an IRS link here. And what an EIN is employer identification number. It's like a social security number for your business that allows the IRS to identify where exactly you are, what your business is. This right here is free to do through this link. I'd recommend doing it because if you're ever going to have staff on payroll, you're going to need an EIN number. Also, when you apply for things such as like business insurance and office space, a business loan, it looks much more professional to be able to put an EIN number, sometimes referred to as a TIN, in that space instead of your personal social security number. Now, what you want to look into is obtaining the proper necessary business licenses and permits. Sorry, there's a mouthful there. What I want to talk about here, though, is the example of starting a brewery. Let's say you were starting a brewery. Well, you're going to be brewing beer, you're going to be distributing beer, and you're going to be serving beer. So all three of those things could potentially require licenses and permits, and these can happen on the federal level, the state level, and the local level. What I would suggest on the local level is look up your town clerk. So this would be whatever city or town you live in. And then you can give them a call and say, hey, I'm starting XYZ business. I'm just curious what licenses and permits I'm going to need. And if you have any information on the county level as well. You could also ask about the state level, but you can always just Google, New Mexico business licenses, and it'll take you to the state website and you can research what you need there. And then you can also research on the federal level. Not as many businesses are going to need those licenses and permits on the federal level, but there are certain categories that will. But the online LLC services, they will provide this for you for an additional fee. They can do this research for you and help guide you through this process. But just don't fall into this common pitfall of thinking you're done after your LLC, because a lot of businesses will need licenses and permits, like a dentist, a chiropractor, or a construction company. Those are good examples. Now, what we're going to talk about in the next video is the 3 paths you can go. We're going to deep dive on this. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we're actually going to look at the fees associated with setting up your LLC. We have an embedded cost calculator below. And what that cost calculator is going to do is it's going to tell you what it costs for 5 years to own your LLC. So that's really helpful because it gives you a better idea of your finances. There's a star rating system that we're going to look into of comparing the different services. We're also going to talk about why state websites can become a pain, and it has to do with domestic and foreign LLCs. So that's going to be a really important topic to break down. And then we're going to deep dive on different questions worth asking yourself. And some of these questions are nice because they're going to educate you on things to consider in the future. Like, what if you need to own your own business, like as far as the location, if you want to buy that office space. These are things that you may want to get an attorney and CPA involved with. So what you can see on the screen right here is that video, and we're going to catch you in that next video. And again, highly recommend you get this free checklist for yourself so you can follow along throughout the video. All right, we'll catch you in the next video.